Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. As you can see from the quote from the outset of this video, Andrew Wilson is a very deeply angry, bitter, detestable little man. I say that at the beginning of this because throughout this entire interview, Andrew will consistently go to the refrain that without a moral foundation, without moral grounding, you have no argument, unless you can find some sort of framework or some sort of rooting with a God, particularly his Christian God, to build this moral framework off of. And I'd just like to respond to that with a very memorable and notable quote from Voltaire. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And with that, let's just jump into it. I've looked at the white nationalists with Jared Taylor, the white nationalist incels with Nick Fuentes. This time we'll be looking at the Christian nationalist through the incel lens, because although Andrew himself is married, he's also a voice in the manosphere that resonates with incels, mainly because he very regularly goes on unhinged rants at women and about women, among an array of other creepy and very absurd commentary. So today we'll be looking at Andrew not in a debate where his angry side comes out, but rather on a right-leaning podcast where he feels like he's in a safe space. So be prepared to hear him say some really ridiculous shit, often with little pushback from the hosts.
I don't even understand what the purpose is of the vote for women. What is it? What is the point here?
Second, and related to the first point, this video is over 90 minutes, and it's rare I can go more than 2 minutes of Andrew talking without him saying something insane and worth responding to. So I'll be stopping a lot. I won't be covering everything in here, I'll just be taking the highlights. But I'll still only be covering a fraction of the insanity in this video.
Why do you hate leftists?
Because they're psychopaths who are going to destroy everything that I care about through suicidal empathy. Because when you really get into the granularity, it's all about ethics, and they don't have any. And so, because there's no ethical foundation, all you're talking about is degrees of psychopathy.
Now this is particularly amusing given the moral bankruptcy of MAGA. But the line isn't anything new either. The old apologetic is that without a moral foundation, the ethical frameworks of the left are baseless, or in Andrew's language, varying degrees of psychopathy. Because wanting healthcare to be a right rather than a privilege, and believing our peers of different races, sexualities, and religions are our equals rather than our subjects, makes us morally bankrupt, while possessing women, establishing an American theocracy, and using ICE as a secret police force on behalf of the president is the righteous path for America to take. Usually, this entire narrative about the foundations of morality is used in regards to atheism, that without the moral foundation of God, namely the conservative Christian God of Andrew's particular ideology, you cannot provide a foundation for your moral framework. This philosophical bent has been addressed and refuted regularly and thoroughly, but even if it hadn't, the absurdity of the claim is demonstrated on a daily basis with this administration. Regardless of what ideological moniker you want to put on it, the vacuous morality, the blatant hypocrisy, and the real-world damaging impact of it all can be seen. So even if you wanted to argue that the actions of MAGA have some sort of solid moral footing, it doesn't make anything about the consequences of the ideology any less psychopathic and dangerous. Andrew just likes to place it in the framework of foundational morals to obfuscate the real consequences behind obtuse moral sophistry. Thankfully, he's an idiot, so seeing through the rhetoric isn't exactly challenging, and the hosts are aware of that fact as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because the entire idea of progressive liberalism is supposed to be voluntarism, and that the left-wing government does not force you or compel you to do anything.
No, but that's bullshit.
But that's the promise.
No, the point of government is to make people do shit they don't want to do.
Completely agree. But the promise of the leftists, the promise of the progressive, the reason they demand that we have a secular government and we can't move towards Christian ethics or Christian nationalism is because secularists are going to do what's fair. And what's fair is you can do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody else. We're not going to force you to do anything. The evil Christian nationalists will.
Where are you getting this, Andrew? That's not, as you put it, the promise of liberalism. That's closer to the promises of libertarianism. But even there, you're completely off base. The things you want the government to force people to do are simply fundamentally different from our own. You want women to live as second-class citizens. You want our government to operate as a theocracy instead of a democracy. We, not Liberals, mind you, just anyone outside of your fanatical ideological bubble, simply want to preserve the core tenets of our democratic process, those that have been granted to us over the past 2 centuries, and want to see our tax dollars utilized on things more productive than corporate bailouts, tax breaks, and bankrolling genocide. Cute straw man to set up. It would work better if it at least tried to be somewhat founded in reality, though.
When you're arguing with a guy like Destiny, the reason he's very frustrating for you to debate with, the reason that he wanted to bog things down into things like the most ridiculous thing in the world, though it's unprecedented. Everything's unprecedented. That's unprecedented, right? The whole idea there, and you pointed this out rightly, is, well, I guess words don't mean anything, right? We just use unprecedented, I guess, when we mean new.
This is pretty funny. See, Destiny really got under Andrew's skin in the debate a while ago. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a particularly big fan of Destiny. I just find it hilarious how upset he was able to make Andrew just by speaking his mind. Now, with regards to the whole unprecedented thing, you're really working hard to normalize the MAGA movement by any means necessary, when in reality it just isn't. It is unprecedented for a sitting president to be convicted of over 30 felonies, for him to gut the pillars of democracy right and left, to be extremely closely involved with cases in front of the DOJ, to be heavily involved with the most infamous sex trafficker in American history, to have used a situation room to cover up his involvement with the most infamous sex trafficker in American history. Yeah, all of that is pretty goddamn unprecedented. So trying to flippantly disregard that is just grossly disingenuous, Andrew. But I expect no better from you. So, when you claim...
We just use unprecedented, I guess, when we mean new.
No, we don't mean new. We mean levels of blatant corruption, cruelty, incompetence, and pederasty that are unprecedented. That's not a liberal take. That's not a leftist or postmodernist take. That's a realistic take from anyone who isn't so drunk on the MAGA Kool-Aid that they've lost touch with reality.
Right-wingers are the reason that they're so much more associated with things like traditionalism or things like religion, this kind of thing, is because they view society as being duty-bound, and progressives view everything through the prism of rights. So I have a right to do this, I have a right to do this, I have a right to do that. And the right is saying you have a duty to do this, you have a duty to do that, you have a duty. So this is where that dialectic really clashes.
You mean the small government, cold dead hands, don't tread on me wing of American politics is all about duties, and the liberals are all about rights? Were you in a blackout stupor during the last administration, during COVID, during any of that? Or during January 6th, when rioters tried to prevent Congress from performing their duties for the American people? It's genuinely surreal to see Andrew make a claim this absurd so confidently and with such a straight face, in spite of it being absolutely contradictory to democracy itself. But Andrew has made a career of saying the most ridiculous nonsense with the utmost confidence and complete indifference to reality, so again, not surprising. So I'm gonna jump a little bit ahead to where Andrew just claims that Trump is, not a fascist, and the people that are saying things like that are just totally off base.
I've had multiple debates with people on whether or not Donald Trump's a fascist, okay? From their worldview. See, it's simple. All you have to do is you take the historic prism of what fascism is. They'll admit, clearly he doesn't meet that. But he meets certain tenets, which we can say have overlap with fascism enough that they reach like a fascist minimum. Well, what the hell does that mean?
Andrew genuinely sees pushing back against the encroaching authoritarian tactics in this country as a bad thing. And here's what I was talking about, where Andrew decides to talk about the metrics that people are claiming don't fit Trump. Trump isn't really a fascist. Because Andrew here claims that it is just some sort of arbitrary and made-up metric in the minds of leftists that Trump kind of meets, and thus that's why we all call Trump a fascist. Okay, well, although fascist can be a rather nebulous term, let's look at the definition of the word fascist and see how many of these metrics the orange despot in chief meets, and see just how arbitrary or absurd calling Trump a fascist actually is. It shouldn't be, too close, should it? This is from Merriam-Webster. A populist political philosophy, movement, or regime, such as that of the fascisti, that exalts nation and often race above the individual, that is associated with a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, and that is characterized by severe economic and social regimentation and by forcible suppression of opposition. Wow. So Trump started as a populist political outsider. Every other sentence out of his dementia-ridden face is about him making America the greatest country on earth. He named his movement Make America Great Again. Anybody that steps even remotely out of line with him becomes the new weekly political scapegoat and punching bag, whether it be Marjorie Taylor Greene or John Cornyn or Thomas Massie, not even touching on people outside of his own political party. I think that all fits pretty well with an autocratic, dictatorial leader, and I'm just barely scratching the surface. On to exalting race above the individual. Between the racial gerrymandering and the racial profiling, both greenlit by the Supreme Court, the nations he's tried to ban immigration from via executive order, and the obsessive use of refugee status to bring white South Africans into the US above any other group of people, I'd say that the racial exaltation is pretty damn obvious. And again, I'm only scratching the surface on that topic. Now, when it comes to economic and social regimentation, between the scapegoating of the LGBT communities, the big bullshit ugly bill, need I say more? The economic and social regimentation between those two alone could fill up an entire hour's worth of content. And finally, the forcible suppression of opposition. The guy is using the DOJ to go after perceived political opponents, desperately doing anything and everything he can to suppress voter turnout and gerrymander representation, and he's even using the FCC to go after late-night comedians who happen to bruise his fragile little ego. Walks like a duck, talks like a duck, looks like an orange bag of shit. I'd say that Trump doesn't just kind of meet some arbitrary metrics that could be considered fascist. No, he meets every metric of fascism to an absurd and precise degree. And this is what happens when Andrew gets into concrete, real topics that can be specifically examined. He falls flat on his face and sounds like an absolute clown. That's why he doesn't like talking about concrete issues and always tries to keep debates in abstracted political issues of worldview and personal philosophy, because it's so much easier to peddle his bullshit sophistry there than it is in specifics. But anyways, Andrew, do go on. Tell us how mean and ridiculous it is for all of us to call a spade, or a fascist, or a pederast. You're doing so well. Keep it up, buddy.
Where is all of that? I mean, the West conquered that. Industrialization conquered that. The starvation's gone. Where is it? You know, I've heard liberals, they've said to me, there's people starving right now. Where? In my nation. Where? I'll go feed them right now. Guarantee you I'll have a meal arranged by this afternoon if you could show me a person who's actually starving in the United States. They can't, because they're not. We've conquered it. These are conquered issues. Like, so what are you bitching of? Are you just bitching that this guy makes way more money than this guy?
To his point on conquering hunger, it's such a flippant disregard for the reality of the problem. Like he looked at a few photos of Ethiopia during the famine of the early 90s and decided if that's not what you're seeing, then hunger isn't happening here. Meanwhile, 1 in 5 American children do not know where or if they'll have dinner tomorrow night. And with the most recent cuts to SNAP and other aid programs combined with the inflation on commodities, that problem is only going to get worse over the next few years. But since Andrew isn't seeing people starving with distended bellies on American street corners, it must not be happening, even though America has consistently ranked among one of the most food insecure industrialized nations on the earth for decades. But remember.
So the idea here is social safety nets, right?
Right.
Okay, so how come those aren't voluntary?
Because when it's voluntary, Andrew, we end up with the most food insecure first world country on earth, while buffoons like you claim that we're not facing this very real problem because you don't see starving people on street corners. And some women and kids on welfare look fat, so clearly it's not a problem.
It's like when I think of a gap between rich people and poor people, if we go back 500 years or 1,000 years, the difference was you lived in a dung heap and this guy lived in a castle. Now the difference is this guy lives in a castle and you live in a 3-bedroom apartment.
It's definitely a choice to look at now compared to feudalism, as opposed to now versus, say, the Gilded Age, the only time in American history that the wealth gap has been this extreme. Andrew does this because it's easier to compare the current disparity with literal feudalism than it is to compare it with any point in American history. Let's be real, the buying power of the average household is abysmal and nearly at an all-time record low. The minimum wage and the average wage is not a livable income. The dozen wealthiest people in the world have more income to themselves than the bottom 4 billion people worldwide. These are all things that the average citizen has spent decades trying to make more equitable, and have made genuine strides towards over a century, only for it all to be pushed backwards over the past 40-some years, particularly the past decade. But Andrew here wants to compare our current regression with the ancient and Middle Ages, as opposed to any time in the last century. Almost as if his rhetoric becomes far less compelling when you're not comparing a 2-bedroom apartment with a mud hut. It's genuinely such a bizarre attempt at defending the creeping oligarchy.
But the reason you're not in a dung heap is because the poor are also richer than they've ever been. And so it's scalable. It's a matter of scalability. But show me in the fattest country in the world, where's all the starving people? Where are they?
The most frustrating element of this kind of rhetoric and its prevalence in discourse is the fact that it not only is such an obtuse and contrarian dismissal of the reality of the situation, it obfuscates and dismisses real issues of malnutrition, food deserts, diet and health behind this whiny mask of grievances about your tax dollars going to give hungry kids at least one regular, nutritious meal a day while we spend billions of dollars bombing Iran and driving up the average cost of living. It's just such a fundamentally weaselly and disingenuous bastardization of a potential dialogue that it proactively prevents real conversation and dialogue around practical solutions. It's a kind of intentional distortion for political points that just turns my stomach to watch.
So what are you bitching of? Are you just bitching that this guy makes way more money than this guy? It's like, what's the complaint? You know, that's achievable. That sort of dream's achievable now to people. That never used to be possible.
And then this final bullshit line about this dream being achievable is just particularly insulting to the average American. A nice little cherry to top off this bullshit Sunday. No, the wealth of the most affluent in society is not achievable for almost anyone. Not only that, but those very few who can achieve it are almost always born into privilege from the outset. You might be able to get to the top 5% of earners. A very, very lucky few might get to that 1%. But the 0.001%, the people like Bezos, Gates, Musk, the Walton family, no. Not a chance for anybody.
So unless there's some objective grounding that you have to tell them that they're wrong, right? It's actually very difficult to get the upper hand in a vibes debate, isn't it? So you really have to bring it back to not just facts, but foundation. They don't have any. This is why I hate them, because they're morally corrupt, ambiguous, no morality having scumbags. And that's what they want to do. They want to take a fact and then argue their vibes about the fact. But when you get to their foundations, what is their foundation? They don't have any. Their entire foundation is there are no moral facts. So if that's the case, how can you do anything immoral if there's no moral facts? How? You can't.
Here again, the old apologetic argument about objective morality gets plastered into the political conversation. Without saying it openly here, Andrew only thinks that people can talk about morality if they have some sort of objective basis of morality rooted in God, his God in particular, and that without it, morality is just vibes. I get the tactic. It's been used for years by apologists, but it's also been demonstrably disproven for just as long, given that systems of morality have always existed, with or without religion attached. Those moral systems have never been static or absolute, and if you really want to tie your morality to a biblical framework, A brief read through books like Numbers, Deuteronomy, or Samuel demonstrate just how grotesque and malleable that framework truly is. But here Andrew is talking about politics, so let's stick to that instead. Do you really think that it's just vibes or opinion that makes internment camps, getting healthcare, education, foreign aid, disease prevention, and so many other causes is just vibes and opinion? No. While, yes, in my opinion, that shit is repugnant, it's not just about opinion. It's not some arbitrary position to say that it is a good thing morally and pragmatically to feed, educate, and preserve the health of the American public, to provide food, vaccinations, and other support all over the world through USAID. If you disagree in your opinion, then all I need to do is point to the measles outbreak here, or the screwworm epidemic happening here, or the Ebola outbreak happening in the DRC, or the return of tuberculosis all over Africa. All of that is able to show with concrete examples why and how those programs are valuable and beneficial to the American public, outside of just vibes. No foundation of God required. But of course, it's easier for you to argue your barbaric positions when you pretend to have God on your side. And it's so easy to dismiss moral atrocities when you claim that without a foundation of God, those morality questions are meaningless, and obfuscating real concrete issues by going into abstractions around moral ontology and epistemology is a rhetorical cornerstone of the Christian nationalists.
Is morality real or not? If it's not real, then you're an anti-realist, let's say. If it is real, then you're not. When I say real here, I'm saying this is a universal fact, that this is a moral fact. Now, the left and progressives and atheists and secularists, they don't generally believe in those moral facts. They think that morality is a social construction that we make up, and it's societally dependent. There is no overarching like moral facts. The religious say that there are, that God gave us moral facts, and these are the moral ways in which you have to live your life. And so they're willing to enforce that. They're willing to enforce those moral facts, because for them not to do that is immoral, right? Allowing my society to run around and do immoral things, obviously I want to curtail that. The other side thinks that that's totalitarian though, right? That's the worldview divide.
Said it before, Voltaire said it best. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Speaking of atrocities, let's take a look at a few lines from the Bible, shall we? This bedrock, this moral foundation that Andrew is so adamant about being central to American society. 1 Samuel 15:3. Now go and attack the Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, infant and nursing child, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Numbers 31:17 and 18. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that hath known a man by lying with him. But all the women children that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. And now some rules for basic good behavior, of course found in Leviticus. Do not eat any meat with the blood still in it. Do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. Do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoo marks on yourselves. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Then again, there's some decent stuff in there. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. See, these are the things that you have to acknowledge when your immutable moral bedrock is based on a religious doctrine that's over 2,000 years old. Either the doctrine is reprehensible, or it's not as immutable as you want to acknowledge, or it's a little bit of both. In any case, trying to say that this particular moral framework is somehow the right one and everybody else's is just vibes or opinion either means you adhere to a really reprehensible moral framework or that moral framework is a lot more malleable than you're willing to acknowledge. In either case, it doesn't hold up to snuff when you try and say that this one is somehow the appropriate one, where anybody else, any liberals or atheists or anybody else that's approaching moral questions from a different framework is somehow wrong. But again, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities, like keeping little girls as conquest prizes for warfare, or slaughtering infants. But hey, my opinion on that is just vibes, right? It's not built on the solid moral foundations of the Bible like yours are, right, Andrew? Right? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Do go on, Andrew. As I said, it's hard not to interrupt his insanity so often, but I'll try my best.
How can you tell a person, how do you tell Destiny that it's immoral that he sucked 50 dicks? How do you do that? If it's the case that that's not a moral fact.
Fuck! Yeah, that didn't last too long, did it? Dear God, my guy, I'm not really a big fan of Destiny, but why do you care about the sexual preferences of your debate opponents so much? Why is it that these weirdos are always so obsessive over what others do in the bedroom? It's like they have a shame fetish or something. They spend so much mental energy focused on what kinds of sex total strangers are having, who they're doing, what they're doing, how they're doing it, all while fixated on how much it personally grosses them out to see. You understand how bizarre that is, right? Particularly when you consistently simp for a rapist and pederast that you revere as a great political leader for the Christian nationalist movement. All this grandstanding really falls flat when it's so demonstrably hypocritical. I care a hell of a lot less about what two men or two women or a man and a woman and another man and a furry and a drag king and a drag queen all do in a consensual organization of genitals. I care about all of that a lot less than I do about what happens between an adult and a child, or a man and a woman where one of the two doesn't consent. But that's right. Homosexuality is icky and immoral according to your interpretation of your favorite book, so that gives you truth, a bedrock of moral facts to stand on and proclaim from the heavens your personal offense. Meanwhile, this man who's deeply offended by homosexuality also says things like this.
Here, like, there's women, you agree, who have orgasmed during SA.
That has nothing to do with whether it's SA.
Bro.
That has nothing to do with whether it's SA. Are you kidding me?
Bro, I didn't say whether or not it's SA. I said during SA. Bro, if that's the case, right, then was it bad for them?
Yes.
Why?
And this.
What would be wrong with me dating an 18-year-old woman who wanted to date me? Why would that be problematic? Why? What's strange about it?
How's society worse because 18-year-olds can't show their asshole on OnlyFans? Like, I honestly want to hear, how's it worse?
Now, if you had behaved yourself, been a good girl, I wouldn't have had
Don't call me that. Do not call me that.
Instead, you had to mouth off and be a bitch, so I just kind of talked to you like I talked to you. Yeah.
But that's right, being gay is just icky. And clearly Andrew is just a very reasonable and insightful individual when it comes to sex, sexuality, and just talking about women in general. Nothing unreasonable here. Nah, not at all.
Why is it that you think he shouldn't suck dick?
Because I said so. And if you're an
but that's fair enough.
Right.
But then the question is, are you seeking to convert your philosophical view into political reality?
Why shouldn't I? I was told with gay marriage that it's no big deal. It's just like heterosexual people getting married. Well, okay, well, what's the argument against 3 men or 4 men getting married and then adopting a child? There really isn't one. You can't really be consistent and be against that. Like, where's the consistency issue? You can say, well, it's the outcomes. And it's like, well, can you prove the outcomes will always be bad? No? Or can you prove that if there's 2 straight people who are heterosexuals who are from vastly different backgrounds, they could have really bad outcomes statistically too. We wouldn't prevent them from having a kid. It's like, what's stopping 10 men from getting married and adopting a kid? Nothing. Nothing's preventing that. And by the way, it's happening now. Now you see men getting married in 3s and 4s. And you see polygamy coming back in a big way. You see birth rate collapses. Like, these are real issues in society.
See, and now you're just lying, Andrew. No state allows polygamy. There are couples with multiple partners, but marriage is still confined within two people. So this slippery slope argument falls on its face from the outset. Not only that, but some of the most infamous polygamous groups in American history were hidden under the guise of religious institutions, who also argued that they're doing what God wants them to do when they have had several wives, including child brides. I think he decided to go with this because it's a bit of a shakeup versus trying to compare gay marriage with bestiality or pederasty. But just like those arguments, this one really has no basis in reality. So why not be honest? You find gay people personally disgusting and want to make dictations around their lives. It's as simple as that. Why pretend it's anything more complicated? Particularly when you're just about to get even creepier. So obviously you're not trying to keep a decent personal image.
But it has to do with another issue,
Okay.
which is women, if you want to get women pregnant, you have a small window.
Mm-hmm.
And it's best to do it in their 20s. And what we do is we tell women to defer their best childbearing years to go to college during those years, which is insane. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I don't know why you would take the opposite sex who has the most limited window for childbirth for healthy babies and tell them to squander all of that. Especially because they end up at college running, the cock carousel often and things like this. And it's like, it's just not good for society.
Wow. So in Andrew's mind, higher education, a college education for women is nothing but a cock carousel. I think that comment shows the truth behind the supposed concern from Andrew, and it's not about society. Andrew just really doesn't like women having autonomy or education. He likes to frame it in terms of birth rates, but the truth is that women who have an education and thus the ability to maintain financial independence aren't reliant on their partners for support. Thus, they're not as easy to keep in bad situations when they're not looking after children from the age of 18 onward. Besides, the problems with bearing children in terms of health complications are generally attributed to women having kids after the age of 35. People usually finish college between the ages of 22 and 25. So Andrew is really more concerned about, as he puts it, the cock carousel, and with condemning the sexual behavior of women. That's just easier to sell when you package it around narratives about birth rates. Andrew is really obsessive about the sex lives of others. Anyone else look at this guy, think of them obsessing over your sexual habits, and just want to take a shower right after, or is that just me? But please do go on, Andrew. I'd love to hear more about this.
If you come to me and you say gays should be allowed to get married, and I just ask you back, why can't 3 of them get married? What's your answer to that? What is it?
What happens when gays get married? What is the Islamist version of homosexuality?
Yeah, so what happens is, if you're going to say 3 men can get married, then you need to be able to say 1 man can marry 3 women.
Why?
Because tell me what argument could you possibly have against it if you allow one and not the other?
Ooh, I know the answer to this one, Andrew. I know the answer. It's got a very specific term. It's called, "You're making shit up, you liar." There is no state in the country where 3 men can get married, or 1 man can marry 2 women, or any combination of any genders can marry more than 1 person. You are just making shit up. I hope that clarifies things. Oddly enough, the most prevalent groups that try for polygamous marriages are in religious institutions. Predominantly the Mormons, but they're not the only ones. And that's because they have this strong bedrock moral foundation in their religion that tells them that it's okay. So say it with me now. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities, like marrying multiple wives, including children. And of course, when Andrew is ranting on and on about his abstract philosophical narratives, anytime he starts talking about actual things that are actually happening, he either deliberately and radically misconstrues them or just completely makes shit up. What does his book say about lying again? That's right. It's just a little part of a thing called the 10 Commandments. The 9th one, thou shalt not bear false witness. But it's the 9th one, so it can't be that important in this bedrock moral foundation that all of us are supposed to build our principles and values off of. But Andrew, he doesn't have to adhere to it. He just has to tell everybody else that America would be a better place if we all adhered to it. But not him, of course, especially when he's trying to make a compelling argument. Why let facts get in the way of telling people what they should do?
If everything that you're arguing is just coming from a me perspective, all morality is just dependent on stance, then even if these people are doing something you consider dumb, it's not immoral. How could it be immoral, or how could it be wrong for them to do that? How? And this is a question when you reduce to the ethical purview. I realized a long time ago, Christians can basically do whatever the fuck we want to secular atheists, progressives, because...
What happens to treating others as you would like to be treated?
Well, so you're going to bank on the benevolence of my view? So if you're going to bank on the benevolence of my view, are you ceding that my view is the right one? Because if it's not...
No, but I'm saying benevolence is an inherent part of being a Christian.
So, but if you have a foundation of just stance dependence for all of your moral claims, right? Then even if I violated this and was a complete hypocrite and actually just verbally just paid it lip service for the purpose of controlling your mind, you can't tell me why that's wrong.
Oh, is the mask slipping there a little bit, Andrew? Nah, he's a true believer. It's not an example of, every accusation being confession. Not the mask slipping at all. No, this is just him talking about something completely unrelated to his own actions, I'm sure. So much to unpack here. Andrew really likes to talk philosophy in spite of having a really juvenile perspective on the topic. It's why anytime he's in a debate with people smarter than him, especially if they're women, he just goes completely off the rails.
What did I just say? Dyke?
Wife with the
I'm sorry, Dyke. Is she morally inconsequential in comparison to your ditch licking?
Andrew keeps going back to this notion that without a moral bedrock like Christianity, all that us liberals have to ground our arguments is vibes, and our perspective is simply selfish and self-centered. Ironic given who this is coming from.
Is it logically possible that there's ever been a woman who's been essayed who'd enjoyed it?
But putting that aside, no. Most of us on the left who aren't building from a religious framework are building off of secular humanism, which is the exact opposite of selfish and self-centered.
No.
Andrew.
I'm 41.
Nice.
41.
41. Do you think nothing wrong with you if you wanted to go by UC Santa Barbara right now and,
What would be wrong with me dating an 18-year-old woman who wanted to date me?
The goal of humanism is a free and universal society in which people voluntarily and intelligently cooperate for the common good. As usual, Andrew has a lot of assertions to make very confidently, almost none of which are grounded in reality, and all of which rely on a straw manning of the philosophy of those who oppose his goals of Christian nationalism. Speaking of, let's see how Andrew here would describe a country run as a Christian nation.
Political climate, well, there is some authoritarianism to it, I suppose, but I just think there's authoritarianism to each ideology which exists, including liberal ideology. It's just authoritarianism now by direct democracy. So it's like, I suppose Christians might come in and say some things that are pretty controversial. They might be like, no, gays can't get married. Prostitution's illegal. No more pornography, right? Blasphemy. Let's be a little more chill on that, right? Maybe they'll put in some things like that. Tell me how society's worse. Like, how's society worse because 18-year-olds can't show their asshole on OnlyFans? Like, I honestly want to hear, how's it worse?
Okay. So first, it is kind of ironic how he wants to be so lenient about blasphemy in spite of the Bible, considering that to be the most unforgivable sin. In Matthew 12, Mark 3, and Luke 12, all describe blasphemy against the Holy Spirit as the most unforgivable sin. Meanwhile, there's almost nothing in the Bible about homosexuality, and kids being sexually exploited is everywhere, from the story of Lot to the conquest concubines in Numbers, all the way up to the Virgin Mary. Girls much younger than 18 are made to do far worse than expose their brown starfish. So either Andrew wants a version of Christian nationalism that's pretty far from his own book, or he's just lying to this audience about what Christian nationalist societies would actually entail. My guess is it's a little of both, given how much Christian nationalism bastardizes Both the Bible and the Constitution in their rhetoric, combined with the fact that they regularly minimize how damaging a theocracy would be in terms of its impact on all Americans.
Well, if we want to look back through human history, we can start with the Byzantine Empire if you want to.
No, but
Massive Orthodox Empire. We can talk about the naming of kings by God himself. We can dive right into the lineage of the King of Kings if you want to. The thing is that I'm not here advocating for a monarch. What I'm saying is that society is better off dominated by Christians than dominated by non-Christians. And if you can point to me a society where that's not true, I'm all ears.
Really, Andrew? I mean, God, where to start? Japan, Korea, Australia, Sweden, Finland, Denmark. I mean, the list goes on and on. There are very, very few, as you put it, Christian nations, and most of those are theocratic backwaters. Now, if you're talking about a larger scope of history, sure, but we're not talking about that right now. Secular societies tend to be the most successful societies in the modern world. Pure and simple. It's this idea of moving backwards into a theocracy. So this idea of moving backwards into a theocracy relies on a distortion of history that's just as dishonest as your advocation of the American Constitution being founded on Christian principles. The fact is that without being dishonest, without lying, you really have no grounds to make your arguments. Thus, when you make claims like this that are on their face just patently absurd, it's really hard to take you seriously, man. Then again, I've never taken you particularly seriously, so do go on.
I'll tell you what I saw as totalitarianism was COVID checkpoints, potential vaccine mandates, communications going through Facebook and the government to identify people who wouldn't wear their mask. That seems like a lot more of this totalitarianism, fascism thing than like, oh, sorry, you're 18, you can't put your asshole all over the internet. Sorry. At some point, maybe we can introduce rationality back into the scheme here, right? It's like, it's not you do whatever the fuck you want or it's totalitarianism. That's not how it works.
Andrew, buddy, we've already been over this. It's not, if you can't do whatever the fuck you want, it's totalitarianism. No, we went over these points already. When you use ICE as your own personal police force to rendition and torment hardworking families, some of which are here perfectly legal, and putting them in internment camps, both domestically and abroad. That's totalitarianism. When you use the power of the Justice Department to go after your political enemies, that's totalitarianism. When you use that same Department of Justice to go after late night TV show hosts who hurt your feelings, that's totalitarianism. Meanwhile, when you complain about having to wear a mask during COVID, that's not totalitarianism. That's epidemiology. That's basic science. The irony of you making these types of asinine claims while talking about how we need to bring more rationality back to political discourse while peddling the shit that you peddle is, it would be laughable if it wasn't so disgusting, particularly coming out of a man who says shit like this.
I will never be able to convince you of my worldview.
You won't.
I know. But the reason is not because I'm not a great orator or I don't make good points or I haven't said things which should be compelling to a person. But Charlie, I just think honestly you're too fucking stupid to understand them.
And this.
What would be wrong with me dating an 18-year-old woman who wanted to date me? Why would that be problematic? Why? What's strange about it?
Because you are in different life experiences than she is. She is vastly...
Do you think 41-year-old women are going to be... Like, let's say I wanted children. Don't you think I should date younger if I wanted to have a lot of children?
An 18-year-old to have children?
Well, you're going to be able to give me the most amount of children, right?
And this.
I work for men that are probably the same age, probably even younger than you, and I've never had them call me a dumb skank.
They don't
I know,
anything.
but
They
the
treat me
problem
with
is
respect.
that's my whole problem.
They treat me with
see.
respect, and I've never
It's
come.
societal
Let me
stigma.
finish.
If
I've never
societal
once.
stigma existed,
You
then women
feel-
would
you
have much
felt-
better behavioral patterns in society.
There's plenty more inside of this entire interview, but quite frankly, dealing with this guy, listening to this shit for that long, I need to clean myself. Yeah. Yikes. I've dealt with some more deplorable people, with Nick Fuentes and Jared Taylor, people like that, but Andrew is his own kind of just disgusting human being who has a knack for saying some really out-of-pocket shit that just makes your skin crawl. And the sad thing is that there's a very prominent audience of young men that hang on to his every word, which is why he's able to go on to shows like this, peddle his bullshit, and actually garner a following. It's why in my comment section, on a disturbing number of occasions, I've heard people talk about how we need to reverse suffrage and take away women's right to vote. Not to mention the shit that they say on a regular basis about minorities. There's this incestuous little club of people that have thrived off of resentment and hate, and their voices have become a very powerful portion of the American political discourse at this time. Whether it's hatred of women, hatred of anybody that's not white, hatred of anybody that's not Christian. That antipathy is so prevalent right now, and we've seen exactly where it's gotten us in terms of public education, in terms of public health, in terms of our economy, in terms of our geopolitical standing. And without some fundamental changes, it's only going to get worse before it gets any better. And sadly, even after the fat orange sack of shit in the White House is finally gone from our political system, it's still going to take decades for us to get back to just where we were before his fat ass came onto the stage in the first place. And sadly, even after he's gone, people like this aren't going anywhere. They're going to try and keep on perpetuating the narrative that they've been trying to push for years to come. Which is why, as disgusting as they may be, it's always important to call them out for how absurd and asinine their rhetoric truly is. And yeah, with that being said, that's all I have for you all today. Thanks for listening. Feel free to leave your feedback in the comments below. As always, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you all next time.